So let's consider this lesson part 2 of quadratic functions. Last lesson we talked about quadratic functions and how to graph them. Now we're going to change that slightly. Again, our standard form of quadratic functions is ax squared plus bx plus c. Last lesson we talked about our axis of symmetry, and this was that line that split our parabola in half. Well, now our axis of symmetry is going to change when we have an actual value for b. Usually we just had 0 be where our vertex is and where our axis of symmetry is, but now it's going to change. Here's our example. Y equals x squared minus 6x plus 4. Usually we would have just used the numbers -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 for our table, but here we need to find our axis of symmetry. The equation for axis of symmetry is x equals -b over 2a. Remember, we have ax squared plus bx plus c. So we're going to plug those in. We will have a -6, because b is -6, over 2 times 1. That's +6 over 2, so that's 3. That means that our middle number, our axis of symmetry, that fold that cuts it in 2 perfect halves, is going to be 3. From there, I'm going to go up 2 numbers and down 2 numbers. We now have all the values that we need to plug in. Again, I always like to start with my axis of symmetry because that gives me what my vertex is. So 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 4. That's 9 minus 18 plus 4. That's -9 plus 4. And so that's -5. Now the beauty of this is that because we know that there's going to be symmetry, you can choose which direction you want to go. Do you want to go towards the larger numbers, or do you want to start working towards the smaller numbers? I personally am extremely lazy and like to go towards the smaller numbers, so I'm going to do 2 squared times -6 times 2 plus 4. That's 4 minus 12 plus 4. So that's -8 plus 4, which is -4. Now, because this is my axis of symmetry, 3, -5 is my vertex, I know there will be that symmetry, and that's a fold, so 4 will also be -4. And then finally, 1 squared minus 6 times 1 plus 4. That will be 1 minus 6 plus 4, which is -5 plus 4, which is -1. If 1 is -1, 5 will also be -1. So we just found all of the values that we need to move on and graph. Don't be thrown for a loop. I just got rid of that middle column of our table. The values are all still the same. And so I'm going to go through and graph. I have 1, -1. So in my x value, I'll go 1. Then I'll go down to -1 in my y value. I have 2, -4. I have 3, -5. 4, -4. And 5, -1. Then I'll go ahead and I draw my line through those points. Remember, this is a parabola. It is not an absolute value function, so it should not look like a V. So a few things to remember. Our A here was positive. So did we expect our graph to open upwards? Yes, we did. Remember, if that was a negative number in front of our x squared, the graph would have been opening down. Another thing to remember is, where is our vertex? Our vertex is the point on the hump, and so it is at 3, -5. Now, does this form a minimum or a maximum? because it's the lowest point of the graph, this is a minimum. Our domain, or all of our possible x values, remember if we zoomed out, even though it looks like the graph is just going straight up, it's actually going slightly outwards. So our domain is all real numbers. And our range, or our possible y values, are y greater than or equal to -5. I hope that this video was helpful in learning how to graph quadratic equations when we have an actual b value. So, joke of the day, what did one plate say to the other plate? Hey man, dinner's on me.